Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Automatic voter registration for all Malaysians, even those living overseas, by year end. And how mixing and matching vaccines can boost immunity. That's coming up. Johor is the latest state to transition into Phase 3 of the National Recovery Plan, while Pahang will enter Phase 4. Senior Minister for Security, Datuk Sri Hishamuddin Hussein, said both states will transition into the new phases this Friday. Johor will now be joining the Klang Valley and Malacca, which moved into Phase 3 on October 1st. Perlis, Terengganu and Sarawak are also still in Phase 3. Kedah, Penang, Perak, Kelantan and Sabah remain in Phase 2, while Negeri Sembilan and Labuan are the other areas in Phase 4. The government also agreed to relaxations of COVID-19 preventive measures taking effect on Saturday, which includes allowing wedding ceremonies at Hindu and Christian places of worship. There is only 1.6% left before Malaysia hits the 90% vaccination threshold for the government to open interstate travel. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin called on those who want to balik kampung to do a self-test before making interstate trips. He said while the Health Ministry has transitioned to symptomatic testing, it encourages people who are in high contact and mobility settings to test regularly. As of yesterday, 88.4% of the adult population in the country have completed their vaccination. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said that interstate activity will be allowed when 90% adults in Malaysia are vaccinated against COVID-19. The Pakatan Harapan Presidential Council said Yang di-Pertua Negeri Melaka Tun Ali Rustam should not have dissolved the State Assembly. The council said based on the state constitution, the Chief Minister's advice to the governor would have been invalid after losing majority support of the state assemblymen. The council also said Tun Ali Rustam had failed to follow precedent when dissolving the state assembly, citing when in 2020, the advice of the Chief Minister Adli Zahari to dissolve the state assembly was turned down. The statement said the move is also not in line with the federal court case of Nizar Jamaluddin versus Zamri Kadir, where majority could be determined outside of the Legislative Assembly. Meanwhile, UMNO President Dato' Ahmad Zahid Hamidi told Malaysia Kini that the party will not work with Bersatu in the upcoming Malacca state election. The Malacca state election will be the first to see UMNO contesting against Bersatu since the Sheraton move last year, which saw the two parties joining forces to bring down Pakatan Harapan. All Malaysians, including those aged above 18 and those living overseas, will automatically be registered as voters by December 31st. Deputy De facto Law Minister Datuk Mas Ermiyati Samsudin said this is based on the recent court ruling to enforce Undi 18 and automatic voter registration.
On September 3rd, the Kuching High Court ruled that the federal government and the Election Commission must lower the voting age to 18 from 21, as well as to implement automatic voter registration by year-end. Meanwhile, Ermiyati added that voting by post is not permitted to Sabah and Sarawak voters living in Peninsular Malaysia. It is only allowed for Election Commission officers, media on duty on election day, and Malaysians residing overseas, except in Singapore, Brunei, Kalimantan, and southern Thailand. The government had intentionally distributed welfare aid during the COVID-19 pandemic using an outdated metric measuring the country's poverty line. Deputy Minister for Women, Family and Community Development, Datuk Siti Zailah Muhammad Yusof, said this was to lessen the government's financial burden as the new benchmark is too expensive. In July last year, the National Monthly Poverty Line Income, PLI, was revised from 980 ringgit to 2,208 ringgit. The PLI classifies which households and how many of them fall below the poverty line, determining who needs help. Siti Zailah said in Parliament today that welfare had so far been distributed based on the 980 ringgit PLI. Her ministry is in charge of distributing aid through the Social Welfare Department. Zailah also came under fire at the Dewan Rakyat today for not providing details and progress updates on key policies, such as aid for the elderly, the sexual harassment bill and gender equality.
She was also called out for reading from her script and not giving proper answers on what the ministry has done with its large budget.
Jangan buat tuduhan. Kita telah berapa kali sebut isu berkaitan dengan gangguan seksual. InsyaAllah kita sedang berusaha untuk memastikan supaya hujung tahun ini dapat dibentangkan. Dan draft berkaitan dengan akta warga emas ini sedang disusun. Jadi sudah tentu melalui proses. Sekira yang berhormat sebagai mantan bekas timbalan menteri lebih tahu isu ini.
Tak payah jadi marah. Saya sedikit
yang berhormat yang di-Pertua, saya tak berhajat untuk memberi. Saya akan meneruskan jawapan saya.
Timbalan Menteri, Timbalan Menteri, saya bangkitkan isu dalam perbahasan.
Banyak lagi sebab isu ni belum disentuh banyak lagi.
Timbalan Menteri jangan marah-marah.
We'll go for a short break. Stay with us.
Ayuh keluarga Malaysia, kita bulatkan tekad dan bersatu hati untuk terus memelihara serta mempertahankan kedaulatan negara. Sebagai keluarga Malaysia yang besar, kita harus bertoleransi dalam semua perkara. Hormat menghormati serta mengekalkan perpaduan rakyat yang berbilang kaum, agama dan bangsa serta integrasi nasional silang budaya adalah tunjang kekuatan kita sebagai sebuah negara bangsa yang berjaya. Umpama selembar benang dikait, ditenun dan dijalin, akhirnya menjadi kain yang sempurna indah.
Welcome back. Being fully vaccinated reduces the severity of COVID-19 if one gets infected, but the amount of protection is proven to wane over time. As the government plans on administering booster shots with a vaccine different from the original vaccine received by an individual, public health specialist Prof. Dr. Muhammad Farhan Rusli says Malaysia must also look into vaccine types and their efficacy levels.
Now, when we talk about booster doses or third doses, we can look at our northern neighbors, which is Thailand. And the reason why they actually explored this was because they found a lot of breakthrough infections when some of their healthcare staff were actually infected after getting the 2 doses of Sinovac. And they followed up and they actually found that the antibodies after a certain time actually reduced. And what they came up with was to see if they could boost the immune response by administering other types of vaccines, which was different than the base vaccine.
Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said Malaysia will proceed with a heterologous vaccination plan or mix and match approach for the COVID-19 booster shots beginning this month. Dr. Farhan said this technique has been proven to increase antibody counts based on research conducted by other countries.
A mixed combination of vaccines where the first dose was actually Sinovac or AstraZeneca, and in particular AstraZeneca as the first dose and Pfizer for the second dose, the antibody counts was up to about 2,200 in the study that I found. And this was different in comparison to 2 doses of Sinovac, which only had about 164. So you can see that there is an exponential increase in the number of antibodies that actually is being developed when you use different types of vaccination, or we call heterologous mix.
He added that it is important to ensure the country has enough booster doses of certain types of vaccines and prioritize those who are vulnerable. American pharmaceutical company Merck says it has signed a deal to supply Singapore with its COVID-19 antiviral pill. Called the piravir. It would be the first oral antiviral medication for COVID-19 when it gets regulatory approval.
Molnupiravir has been touted as a potential game changer in the fight against COVID-19. The drug is designed to introduce errors into the genetic code of COVID-19, and clinical trials on the experimental drug have shown to reduce the risk of hospitalization or death by about half in people most at risk of contracting severe COVID-19. Merck and partner Ridgeback Biotherapeutics say they are seeking U.S. emergency use authorization for the pill as soon as possible and to make regulatory applications globally. Last week, Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said Malaysia is in talks to procure the new drug as the country needs more innovative treatment options in addition to vaccines.
Australia's COVID-19 vaccine rollout has hit a major milestone. 80% adults have received at least one dose, while a little over 58% of those aged 16 and older have been fully vaccinated.
The epicenter of Australia's recent outbreak, New South Wales, is currently the most vaccinated state, having officially passed the 70% mark this afternoon. The state is due to exit a 2-month lockdown on Monday. Schools, hospitality venues and most businesses will be allowed to reopen. Newly elected State Premier Dominic Perrottet confirmed that the new freedoms are for those fully vaccinated.
Taiwan has warned that China will be fully capable of invading the island by 2025. This was the government's first clear message to the public that the country faces a threat of war. Its defense minister said military tensions with China are at their worst in 40 years.
Chiu Kuo-cheng issued the warning after almost 150 Chinese warplanes operated in international airspace near Taiwan between Friday and Monday. The remarks follow appeals by President Tsai Ing-wen to the international community to support Taiwan against Chinese aggression. Taiwan considers itself a sovereign state. China, however, views Taiwan as a breakaway province. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden said his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping had agreed to abide by the Taiwan Agreement. Biden appeared to be referring to Washington's long-standing One China policy, under which it recognizes China rather than Taiwan. However, this agreement also allows Washington to maintain an unofficial relationship with Taiwan. Under the Taiwan Relations Act, U.S. is obligated to help Taiwan defend itself.
The son of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos registered his candidacy for next year's presidential elections, triggering protests in the Philippines. Ferdinand Marcos Jr., also known as Bongbong, vowed to unite Filipinos, but the issues and human rights abuses surrounding his family continue to anger activists more than 3 decades after the downfall of his father.
Protesters rallied outside the Commission on Human Rights building in Manila, some burning pictures of the late ruler as they vowed to block the return of the family to power. The late Marcos placed the Philippines under martial rule from 1972 to 1981 and was reported to have plundered the state wealth amounting up to $10 billion, among other human rights violations. The Marcos family has long sought to rebuild its image and has repeatedly denied wrongdoings. Marcos Jr. is the 4th politician, including retired boxing icon Manny Pacquiao, to confirm their intention to run to succeed Rodrigo Duterte, who cannot seek re-election.
The recent assassination of a leading Rohingya leader and the ongoing trial of Aung San Suu Kyi has put Myanmar's crisis back in the media spotlight. Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests about post-coup Myanmar. That's coming up after AWANI Tonight. That is all we have for you on tonight's show. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Soraya Miao. We'll see you soon.